Good evening, Rabbi.
Good evening. We have one person in Zoom land and one person live, but there'll be many people hopefully listening. Okay, we are continuing part 2 of Parshas Va-eira. And again, the name of the title was How to Take Mitzrayim Out of the Jew. Yesterday, we shared the beautiful Torah of Rabbi Yossi of Salant, how he was showing how Hashem was explaining to Moshe why things had to be worse, and that the real problem wasn't that Paro was keeping us from going back, but it was the Jews not wanting to go back, because going back and being saved by Hashem means that you have to live with Hashem and be close to Hashem and be part of that relationship with Hashem. And the Jews would rather not have that. They would rather suffer. They'd suffer in the exile that they got used to than have to accept living with Hashem on a full-time basis. So the issue is, how are we going to get them out of this mess? So part of the answer is with continued suffering. The suffering can get so bad that maybe the Jews are still willing to do that. But as we'll see, that's not exactly what Hashem does. Because during the next 10 plagues, what happens? Things get better for the Jews. And Hashem did not want the Jews to want Hashem to save them and even to be forced into having a relationship with them, because that's still not real as well. So we've got to understand, how is this going to happen? So there's still a number of questions we did not answer from yesterday. I'm not going to repeat them, but we're going to now go through the piece of the Emunas Itecha from Rav Wolfson. And we're going to start from the answer, and hopefully we can finish it all today and see the second half of the story. And we're going to connect it to a number of things. Tomorrow night is Rosh Chodesh Teves, and Shavat. Thank you. I'm so used to being in Teves. Rosh Chodesh Shavat is tomorrow night. So let's talk a little bit about Rosh Chodesh Shavat. So I've got some sources underneath this. So let's take a look at a couple of sources and see how he deals with them. Let's start the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says there's 4 different Rosh Hashanahs. And it said, Be'echad B'Shvat, on the first of Shavat, it's Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. It's the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. What does that mean? For the tree. You know, we're used to in school, we go to Bishvat Higia, Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot. That's not correct. It's not Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot. It's Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. Kedivrei Beis Shammai, like the words of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Omer b'chamisha sarbo. Beis Hillel says on the 15th. Okay, so now we got to understand what's the Michalowicz about. And there's 2 very unusual things about this Mishnah. First of all, what's this idea, le'ilan? And what is the Rosh Hashanah? Well, we know things that take root before Tu B'Shvat, they get calculated in the previous fiscal agricultural year. Things that take root after Tu B'Shvat are in the following agricultural year. So we want to know, when is that cutoff point? Beis Shammai seems to say it's the 1st of Shvat. Beis Hillel says on the 15th of Shvat. And I guess a lot of that has to do with how much water and rain came. So the rain, if there's enough rain that it gets it to take root before Tu B'Shvat, it goes for 1 year as opposed to the other year. But what's unusual is usually it just should say Divrei Beis Shammai. If you're familiar with Gemara language, or it says, or Beis Hillel Omrim, B'chad B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. I don't know anywhere else where it says, when you're giving an opinion, for example, it says Beis Hillel Omrim B'chamisha Sopor. Beis Hillel says on the 15th. But this idea of saying the 1st of Shvat Rosh Hashanah, Kedivrei Beis Shammai, like the words of Beis Shammai. What does that mean? Like the words of Beis Shammai. It's a very unusual way to introduce a Michalowicz. Number two, what's the idea of le'ilan? One tree. What do you mean one tree? It's more than one tree. It's many trees. So that's an issue. Okay. So let's take a look. I'm sorry, I'm going to be flipping back and forth a little bit, but what could I do? So he's going to say, Levara Indian. Many of the questions we've asked yesterday that we did not get an answer, we're going to answer now. Naktim es divrei hachidush harim. Let's introduce the words of the chidush harim on the Mishnah that I just quoted. And he asks the question. He's saying, why does it say Kedivrei Beishamai and not just saying Divrei Beishamai? And this is what the Chidush Harim answers, one of the Ger Rebbes, V'tiritz, Kinei B'rosh Chodesh Shvat Bo Yischashtus Hashpo'a B'Torah. Rosh Chodesh Shvat is a time where there's a renewal of a flow of Torah. How do we know that? It's an explicit pasuk in the Torah. Do you know where Rosh Chodesh Shvat is mentioned in the Chumash? Anybody know? Well, it's been a while. It was in the dead of the summer. Take a look. Dvarim, second pasuk. Eila Dvarim that Moshe spoke. Oh man, I didn't bring the right pasuk. I'm sorry. I did not bring the right pasuk. My mistake. Okay, it shows you I'm still human. Baruch Hashem. So he brings the pasuk here. As it says, yes, it was there. Bashtei Asor Chodesh, on the 11th month, Be'echad LaChodesh, on the first day of the month, Hoil Moshe Be'er Es HaTorah Zos Limor. Moshe began to review the Torah. So clearly it says the 11th month is Shvat on the first day, Rosh Chodesh Shvat. It was when Moshe, the final 37 days of his life, he gave the final speech to the Jewish people. And that speech, and was on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And that's the whole Sefer Dvarim. And the Sefer Dvarim takes the 4 books and expands greatly upon it. Now, interesting. So he's saying Rosh Chodesh Shvat is when there's a renewal of the Torah. Ukamon, just like in a physical sense. Sherosh Chodesh Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Lila Nos. Just like Rosh Chodesh Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah for the physical trees. Shapero Shachantu ad Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Nichnetu ad Shamim. The trees the fruits that were rooted on Rosh Chodesh, by Rosh Chodesh Shvat, that were rooted from the rain that came, Shekodem Rosh Hashanah, before the past Rosh Hashanah. And the fruits that take root after the first of Shvat, and they now grow from the rain that comes after Rosh Chodesh. So what do you see? And rain, is symbolic of a lot of things. So just like there's a physical reality, every physical mitzvah of the Torah has a spiritual component behind it. So just like Tu B'Shvat, we recognize how the rain impacted the growth of the fruits. And there's the fruits that grew this year, and there's rain that's going to have it grow afterwards. Umavur, and we know Shikshamim Nikram Kol Minei Shefa Asher Min Hashamayim. Rain is a code word for any shefa, a flow that Hashem brings down. Hakol Kamosh Nigzar, as Hashem decreed on Rosh Hashanah at Shmini Atzeres. From Rosh Hashanah to Shmini Atzeres, Hashem decrees Meruchnius ad Gashmius, spiritually and physically. So just like Hashem decides that, what about the new insights in Torah? They're going to happen for the new year. The hashpah for that starts on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Then the spring of Torah is able to give forth its waters. And he mentions, Ugadole Ador, great tzaddikim, they can already sense the spiritual energy cooking inside of them. Just like the sap in the tree on Rosh Chodesh Shvat starts to come out. So the great tzaddikim, the insights in Torah start coming tomorrow night. And they could tell V'niten la'avchin, they can tell the difference. Hachiluk, shel chidush haTorah shel acharei chodesh Shvat. Me'osov they can tell the difference between the novel insights in Torah after Shvat or before. That's for the special ones. Avol haklal kula, but the majority of the people, they don't really feel that energy till maybe the 15th of Shvat. Now this becomes the discussion between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. This is what it means when it says, remember the Gemara is always, you have to know, as much as you think Gemara is a analysis of halacha, and I got it to stories, but everything is the deepest Kabbalah that's concealed within simple external things. And of course, there is an idea of a Jewish Arbor Day, where depending on when this day marks the new growth of the physical trees. It's for sure true, but it's paralleling something much more. And that's why it's not called Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot for all the trees, but Le'ilan. And what's the difference between that? Le'ilan Sho'ilan HaMiyuchad, the unique tree. There's only one unique tree. What was the most one unique tree ever created? Eitz HaChaim B'toch HaGan, the tree of life inside the garden, which is Shua Torah. Okay, that's the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. U'mischadeshes Hashanah L'Hashpas HaTorah. And the year now renews with a new flow of Torah. And therefore, whatever the Mishnah said, Be'echad B'Shvat, on the first of Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, it's the Rosh Hashanah for the tree, Kedivrei Beis Shammai, like the words of Beis Shammai. Lo melech to tell you, Shaf Divrei Beis Shammai nechonimim, that Beis Shammai is absolutely correct. This is not a time where we say we don't paskin like Beis Shammai, because Beis Shammai is out talking about the deepest aspect. Kiligdole Hador, because the great leaders, the great tzaddikim, Nergeshes Kabbalas Hashem B'Torah Kvar B'Rosh Chodesh Shvat, they could feel the new flow of energy, of new insights into Torah and Rosh Chodesh Shvat. But that's Kedivrei Beis Shammai. As Beis Shammai tells us, Shekenu Adover Divrechem, their words are absolutely correct. Aye. So what about Beis Hillel? Beis Hillel Omrim, the two B'Tesvav on the 15th. What does that mean? V'divrei Mamorim Al Sharam. They're talking about the rest of the people. Shlet Slam, Rosh Hashanah Lilan Torah Hu B'Tesvav B'Shvat. That for them, the rest, they don't get that until a little bit later. It takes them a little longer for them to be sensitive to the spiritual energies that are there. Okay, so this is the deeper mystical understanding of Tu B'Shvat. In other words, just like when Moshe Rabbeinu was giving us Torah, and it was Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah was an expansion over the first 4 books. It took the 4 books into a new level of reality. And it was introduced by a human being, which Hashem now canonized in the Torah. It's part of Torah, but it was initiated by Moshe Rabbeinu. It was his insight in taking everything he knew about Torah over the 40 years and says, now you're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. This is the explosion of the Torah in and of itself through Moshe Rabbeinu that started on the 1st of Shvat, which means every year, the explosion of incredible new energies of Torah come out on the 1st of Shvat for those that are very righteous. Not everybody can see it. It becomes a little bit more apparent on the 15th. Just like internally, the sap may start coming on the 1st of Shvat, but Shkedia Porachas, when do you see a little bit of blossoms? On the 15th. That's when you can tell. So what's externally going on is happening internally on a spiritual level. And this is a good thing to know. While we're on the topic, let's digress a little bit. I think it's important. Let's talk a little bit more about the month of Shvat while we're on the topic. You know, every month has a number of things. So let's talk. Every month has a special letter. We discussed this, I think, 2 winters ago. I don't know if we did Shvat. Maybe we did. No. We didn't. We didn't do these last month. So you're going to get a little bit of the month. I know we still owe you. I'm sorry. I never finished that project. So I'll give you a little bit about Shvat. Shvat is the letter goes with Shvat is tzadi. Tzadi. Because the tzadi, remember, is short for the word tzadik. And the tzaddik, we say tzaddik yesod olam. That's the pasuk. A tzaddik is a foundation of the world. And the real tzaddik, he personifies that tree, the Eitz HaChaim. Right? Now, if you think about it, the tzaddik itself, as a tzadi sophis, represents the true manifestation of the tzaddik in the future. And the tzadi sophis itself looks like a tree. Looks a little bit, the tzadi sophis looks a little bit like a tree. And we know the Torah calls a man Eitz HaSadeh, right? Eitz HaSadeh, Adam Eitz HaSadeh, man is the tree of the field, which is the gematria 474. And 474 is also gematria of da'as, knowledge. And that's what makes a tzaddik a tzaddik. The da'as that you're getting from the real Torah. And of course, knowledge, what's the Hebrew word for intimacy when Adam was intimate with Chava? Va-eira Adam is Chava. That's connection, that's intimacy. So Shvat's the month for connecting to the true tzaddik, the true tree of life for the generation. Now, what's the mazal? What's the astrological sign? It's Aquarius. And what's Aquarius? The dli, the pale. Okay. Now, what really happens in the month of Shvat? The rain, again, the rain waters of the winter, the snow begins to melt, the water's pouring the tree of light, and the water coming is like a dli, is like a pail. Okay, dli also means to lift up, and we all get lifted up. Now, the letter of the previous month, Teves, is the ayin, which means an ayin means an eye. Okay, you take the ayin of Teves, is lifted up to connect to the tzaddik, you get an eitz. Ayin tzaddik is the tree. That's the tree. Okay, but more than that, what does a pail do? What's the function of a pail?
To carry.
Not more than just to carry.
To collect.
More than just to collect. You only told me half the story.
להוציא מים.
To what, Esther?
להוציא מים. לשאוב מים.
לשאוב מים.
זה רק חצי הסיפור. אני רוצה הכל הסיפור. Okay, well, here's the kol hasipor. The water, let's say, is in the well. You need the water on the farm.
Correct. Nice.
So the dali is dole umashke. The dali is a conduit.
Collecting and pouring.
The dali is able to take the water from the source and pour it to the place you want it to go. So the dali doesn't do anything for itself. It's the utensil, it's the clay kibul to be able to draw out the water and hold it long enough to spill it onto the tree. And who is that? Tzaddik. The tzaddik is dole umashke. That's when Moshe started to review the Torah on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. He was the consummate dali. Because we know there's a law about a melech, ein lo migarmei klum. The king has nothing for himself. Billions of gallons of water flow through this bucket, but he doesn't keep any for himself. He shares it with everybody else. So that's the idea of the month of Shvat. It's a month of studying Torah, getting the chidushei Torah that come to you, and then to share it with others. That's what the month is all about. And we'll see the tribe that goes with this is Asher. Did you have a question?
Yes.
The tribe, the Shevet is Asher. Asher means pleasure and happiness. And look what Yaakov blessed Asher with. From Asher comes delicious fat bread and delicacies for the king. So usher represents the sense of taste and eating. Okay, and interestingly, the special tree mystically that usher represents is the olive tree, which has lots of good oil because that's in the tribe of Usher. Now, of the Shivat Minim, amen, the olive is the sixth. Now, you know, in Kabbalah, of the lower seven spheros, the sixth is Yesod, the foundation, which is the reproductive organ. So Tzaddik Yesod Olam. So this comes back again as well. And also one other thing, and therefore the month of Shvat is a time for tikkun on eating. And the whole month of Shvat is in the Shovavim. What we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. We're talking about purifying our sexual tendencies, but it doesn't only limit it to that. It's the pleasures of the world. So well before one is engaged in intimacy with another person, they're very intimate with food. And we're talking about the tzaddik, and tzaddik ochel lesova lo katuv bitno. Tzaddik ochel lesovas nafsho, to make his soul full of life. Okay, so therefore that's why we have the mitzvahs of eating the fruits and all these things that come into what's happening. So that's a little bit about Shvat. So therefore Shvat is the Dli. Shvat is the month where you can really get new insights into Torah. It's a great spiritual time where one can grow greatly in improving his midos and everything that goes into the Shovavim story. Okay, so that's the first point. So we talked a little bit about Rosh Chodesh Shvat. We'll see how this connects to the Parsha and what we're talking about. So now there's another interesting thing. And we're going to jump that seems has nothing to do with our storyline. We're going to learn a little bit about the Benot Salafchad. There was a person who lived in the desert with the Jews who left Egypt. His name was Salafchad. Salafchad died very early on in the journey. Why did he die? Well, according to the Gemara, he was Mechalel Shabbat. As soon as the Jews got the mitzvah Shabbat, he was Mechalel. Many say he was the Mokoshesh. He was the one who gathered up the sticks, and they killed him for being Mechalel Shabbos. He had 5 daughters, and Moshe had just given the laws of inheritance. They're all basically flow through the males. So what do they say to Moshe? 27. Lama yigaresh avinu mitoch mishpachto. Why should our father's name be lost to the family? Cain Ben, he has no son. Tnu lanu achuza betoch achei avinu. Give us a portion amongst our father's kinsmen. So what was their argument? Look at this Rashi. Rashi says, and Salafchad had no sons, just 5 daughters. So he says, we stand in the place of male children. You should treat us like men. And if you say the females are not regarded as issue, meaning issue children, in respect to inheritance, if you're going to say we have nothing to inheritance, then our mother should marry her deceased husband's brother and do the mitzvah of Yibum. You hear what they're saying? If you're going to say that we as girls are not considered zera and we're not entitled to inheritance, then you know what? Then it's like our mother never had any kids. So then let her marry our uncle, our father's brother, and have children.
She's not allowed to be.
But so the whole Rashi's absurd. You can't do that. They're really our children. And what are they talking about? We know there's many mitzvahs that women are excused from. Mitzvahs aseshas ban grama, all kinds of mitzvahs. So what's their point? We know there's differences in halacha, right? And they could just be zera. They could be zera, but not in terms of Yerusha. So what was their argument all about? And then let's see so Moshe says, I don't know. Let me see what the answer. I got to go to God. And what does God say in 29? Cain, yes, benos slavos dobros. The girls are speaking justly. Give them a portion. Yes, for sure. And pass on the Yerusha of the father. Fascinating. Now look what Rashi adds. He says, understand the word Cain as Targum does. Yeus, which means rightly, properly. And he said it in other places as well. So look what it says. This tells us that their eye, the girls, saw what Moshe's eye did not see. That's what Hashem said. Hashem said, exactly so, this chapter written before me on high. This law is in Shemayim. The girls intuited it, and you didn't. So the question obviously is, what is going on over here? These young women can figure out something that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know. How is that possible? So these are the questions that Rav Wolfson wants to now address. And that's what this whole paragraph says. So he explains like this a beautiful thing. And again, we have a few interesting sources. He says, Kinei Eretz Yisrael mechuvenes neged Eretz Alyona. Eretz Yisrael parallels the spiritual worlds above. And in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, Kol Yisrael yeshem chelik olam haba. Everyone has a portion in the world to come. Shneimar v'amcha kulam tzadikim olam yirshu eretz. So the Sfarim write, that statement koi refers bein ala Eretz Yisrael or bein ala olam haba. Every Jew is a chelik in olam haba up there, and what's represented down here is Eretz Yisrael. And it's very interesting, like the Gemara in Ksuva says, Kol mahalech dalet amas be'Eretz Yisrael. Anyone who takes 4 steps in Eretz Yisrael, muftach lo sheben olam haba. He's guaranteed he's someone who can be someone who can live in olam haba. You got to understand what that really means. You just can't have a person doing Averis and walking 4 steps, but there's a connection. Every Jew has 4 amot in Eretz Yisrael. I don't want to get the laws of principle, but every Jew is entitled. You have 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael. You go to Eretz Yisrael, you're entitled to 4 amos. Just like you have a chelik in olam haba. Now listen to this. So every Jew has a portion in the world to come. Every Jew has a portion in Eretz Yisrael. Now, what was Slavcha's crime? He blemished the aspect of Shabbos, as he was the Mekoshesh on Shabbos. And what do we know about Shabbat? The Shabbat, who me'ein olam haba. Shabbat is a taste of the world to come. Ubechinas olam haba, ubechinas nachala. Shabbos, Shabbos is an aspect of olam haba, and it's an aspect of a nachala. It's called a nachala b'li meitzorim, without any boundaries. So let's see what Slavcha lost, because he was Mechalel Shabbat. He lost his portion in Eretz Yisrael because he sinned. He got killed. He has no portion. But we have a rule, and I want to show you the source for this pasuk. It's a very important pasuk. It says like this. Where is it? 36, Book of Shmuel. It's one of a woman was telling this to David HaMelech because she wanted to get him to reconcile with Avshalom. She says, Kimos namus, we almost die. V'chamayim anigorim arza, and like water that is poured out on the ground, asher lo yosef, it cannot be gathered up. V'lo yisol hakim nefesh, Hashem will not take away the life, v'chashav machshavos of the one who makes plans. And here's the pasuk. Levilti yidach mimenu nidach, so that no one will be kept banished. That's the clause. Levilti yidach mimenu nidach. That's tzaddikim mean that even if a person dies, but no Jew is lost forever. That's the main idea. Nidach is someone who is pushed away, but levilti, so that it should not be permanently pushed away. No Jew, that's the deeper pshat. She's talking about when Avshalom was in trouble with his father. She wanted to reconcile them. So Yoav comes along and wants to reconcile. It's a whole story. I can't get into it. But it was the female, that you should remember, who showed this insight to David that people have been pushed away, you don't keep them away forever. You got to find a way to bring them back. And David HaMelech brought Avshalom back. But the point is, it's a much bigger context. The bigger meaning is Hashem doesn't want to lose anybody. He doesn't want to lose anybody. So now, let's take a look at what he says over here. So the father was Michalowicz Shabbos. He lost his Olam Haba. He loses Eretz Yisrael. But al pi haklal shel yidach mimenu nidach. But the rule is that one who's pushed away is not permanently pushed away. There must be. There has to be a way that he can go back to the Nachala Olam Haba and the Nachala Eretz Yisrael. This is why you think the girls wanted the Nachala to have a piece of land in Israel only. For monetary issues. They knew there's this connection, Olam Haba, Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is the physical manifestation down here of Olam Haba up there. And for this reason, the daughters wanted to have an inheritance. Why? They wanted to continue the repair to Tzlavchad. To return to his portion, Bibechinas of the Eskas, Bra Kara Davua, that a son is the leg, a child is the leg of the father. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago on Shabbos. And the Gemara says, and I put it down over here as well. Sorry, I'm flipping around, getting your eyes dizzy. But it's good, keeps us a little awake. Where is it now? I know I quoted the Gemara here. Maybe I didn't. I thought I did. Oh, here it is, 32. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Kol she'ena maniach ben liyorsha. If someone does not leave behind a son to inherit for him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu molei olav evra. Hashem is filled with wrath against him. And that's what the Benos Slavcha said. And the proof is, they said, let's have a piece of land for our father. The pasuk says, then you shall pass his inheritance to his daughter. And you have Havarta, it's got the word Evra, wrath. So in other words, what they're trying to say is, if our father has a portion, it won't be that like Hashem is angry with him. In other words, the idea being, what the deeper idea is, what does it mean a person doesn't live anybody to inherit him? To inherit it means he hasn't done anything to extend Yiddishkeit, right? If you lived in this world, we're not talking about circumstances beyond your control, but you can't carry on the torch of Yiddishkeit. Forget it. It's not a good thing. So let's go back and now put this together. It's a beautiful idea he's saying over here. So now he's saying like this. So someone does not leave a child to inherit. Hashem's angry with him. But no, there's no way to fix things up to the child inheriting. We've said many times, you're going to see it in a minute. It's all going to fit in over here. Now, he's going to explain this now. Hashem has many hidden paths to bring repairs to Jewish souls. So nobody should be lost. Hashem doesn't want to lose anybody. And there's three ways that somebody who would be lost should not be lost. Number one, one is through transmigration of souls. Your soul comes back and you fix it up. That's one way. Another way, are they sod hayibum, or the secret of yibum. When the brother marries the widow, the child is named after the deceased man, and that is like the Gilgul as well. All are they masa haben, or the actions of a child that help for the repair of the parent, as we know that the child is a knee of the foot of the parent. Now, this is all not something that's scientific. It's not something that's easy for a person to understand. These are ideas beyond human comprehension. So now let's see what the Benos Slavchad had to say. I know you think this has nothing to do with the Parsha. Just hang on. So the daughters of Slavchad made the following argument. They say, either way, you got to do something. Now, if we're considered Are we considered a child that can redeem our father? Are we a child that we can make tikkun? If we're a child that can make tikkun, then azai tinatzen lam nachlas slavchad. Then give us a portion in Eretz Yisrael. What do you think we're going to do with Eretz Yisrael? We're going to do mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. Our father sinned. He's losing. He was Machal Shabbos. He didn't get to go to Eretz Yisrael. He can't do any tikkunim of Eretz Yisrael. Listen, guys, what happened? The generation that went into Eretz Yisrael, they made tikkun for all 600,000 parents who died in the desert. They were supposed to go to Eretz Yisrael, but they sinned and they didn't go. You think Hashem took them out of Egypt just to die in the desert? They all needed tikkun to do mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael that they could have done easily had they not done all these Va-eiros. So now what happens? They all die. So what happens? They die. Their children inherit land. They make tikkun by now working the land with all the mitzvahs, hatluyot va'aretz, and they do tikkun on the parents. So the daughters of Slavka said, listen, our father has 5 daughters. We need a tikkun. It can't be the Jew doesn't get saved. So let us inherit to make tikkun. What are you going to say? No, you're not sons. Well, we're not sons, but our father has to have tikkun. There's no such thing as a person not having tikkun. If we can't be considered children to repair our father's soul, then there's only 3 ways to make tikkun, yes? So what's another way? And let our mother do yibum l'tzarech tikkuno for his repair. It has to be. Sheyishuv al tikkuno, he has to be corrected. Ki lo yidach mimeno nidach. Nobody is permanently put away. One of these 2 has to happen. So what they were asking for land in Eretz Yisrael was for one purpose. So our father has eternal existence. We're making the tikkun for him. And if you're not going to consider us as children, you got to give him a way of tikkun. Then you'll have to our mother with that. In a certain way, we could look at the state of Israel post-Holocaust was a great opportunity for tikkun. Great opportunity tikkun. But only made a tikkun for those Jews who observed the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. So some were fortunate to have tikkun. Others not so fortunate. So other things have to happen. Now the real question is, how in the world did these girls figure this out and Moshe couldn't? That's an amazing question. So let's take a look at this next paragraph. And that which they could see and Moshe couldn't. So the Maral explains a very nice idea. And let's just give you a little English, because I know all this Hebrew for some of us, not Esther and Shmuel. They're loving going into the Hebrew. But some of us over here, it's a little bit challenging. So let's take a look right over here. Look what we have on the Seder night. We have 3 matzahs and 4 cups of wine. Why and what's it paralleling? The 3 matzahs parallel Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The 4 cups, the 4 imahot. And what's the deeper difference? The father's strength, the man's strength in general, is da'as, intellect. The Gemara says that you don't really develop your intellect till you're eating bread, mizonot. So there's a connection between that and das, mystically. Women's strength is, we'll call hergesh, feelings and emotions. So, and you see, what does wine do? What does wine do? It brings out. It brings out. Wine is, if anything, wine alters your intellect, right? It alters. You can't think logically so well, but it really exploits the emotions. So that's, and now on Pesach, what do we have to do? We have to experience Geula. How do you experience it? Intellectually or emotionally? The answer is there's 2 ways to do it. 2 ways to do it. Intellectually and emotionally. So now, with this little introduction, let's go back. and continue with the Maral. I can skip this part. I already spoke it out. Okay, so now, so you understand. Okay, I get all this. Now, this is all the Maral. Now, Ubeiza b'chidish yeshem bin agula bein inyanim amusagim b'das ubein inyanim shem l'mala min adas v'rak musagim behergesh halev. The two aspects of redemption is either with one conceptual redemption that you could intellectually understand, or things that are beyond das and can only be comprehended emotionally with your heart. And that hope and trust in redemption, that's something that's in the regesh of the lev. It's in the feelings of the heart. We're believers, the children of believers. Margishim belibam. We feel in our hearts a trust that the redemption will come. It's like an aspect of divine inspiration. The Jews in general have certain aspects of a limited amount of Ruach HaKodesh in every generation. How do you get it? A person who learns Torah, davens, does mitzvahs, stay away from va-eiros, he has a healthy feelings. He believes that Mashiach is going to come. Is it logical? Is it intellectual? No. It's a feeling. That's one way. I've got to understand. We know Nistarim Darche Hashem being Tikkunei Nefashos Yisrael. How Hashem is going to repair everybody is a very big secret. And Moshe Rabbeinu was grappling with this issue. Why does the tzaddik have it bad? Why does Russia have it good? Well, the real answer is what? It depends on the sod of Gilgul and Neshamas. You got to know which souls are coming back. This is not a logical concept. Gilgul Neshama is not logical. It's beyond logic. And what did Hashem say to Moshe when he wanted to understand this? Hashem said, "V'risa sacharai, you'll see me from the back. Upanai lo yira, but you're not going to see me by the face." Why? You can't see it clearly, like face to face, only from the back. That means it's beyond intelligence. Now, so where are you going to get this from? This comes from feelings. Feelings say it can't be that a Jew should be lost. Logically, a Jew should be lost. Famous Gemara says, what should happen? They asked the prophets, what should be to the person? They asked Torah, what should be the person who sinned? He should bring a korban, or the Navi should die. But the deeper understanding is you do tshuva. But that's not logical. Tshuva is not logical. A person that sins, you messed up, you're Machal Shabbos, don't ask me Machal Shabbos, you're dead, you're finished. That's logical. But then it's beyond logic. Why do you want to save this guy? Why? Because Hashem says he's a part of me. I love him. That's not logical. It doesn't have to be logical. It's beyond logic. So that is all. And all these wondrous things that Hashem does, it's all done up. It's all for the tikkun. Okay, so now put it all together now. See how it makes sense. Moshe, he's the epitome of what? Emotion or logic? Logic. So they says, listen, our father died. There's nothing we can do for him. So, sorry. Logic says there's nothing to be done. So then they say, but what's going to be? It can't be that our father's not going to have anything. So Hashem says, Moshe, I want you to know, this answer comes from a place beyond logic. It comes from an area of that nobody should get lost. But since Moshe had such a sharp logic, he couldn't accept anything that's not logical. He's like the Jewish Spock, so to speak. That something's not logical doesn't make sense. We don't operate that way. Hashem said, Moshe, you're very, very smart, too smart to understand this thing that comes from Hergish. That's beyond logic. So it comes out Nimtza, ki letzad malaso shel Moshe Rabbeinu, because of his great virtue. Nela mimenu inyan said that's why he couldn't get it. And that's what Hashem says. This parsha said above, beyond logic. And that's why the Benot Slavcha could see something that Moshe did not see.
Question.
Yeah.
So is it not logical that, okay, if he doesn't have any sons, so he's got daughters, how is he going to get the tikkun?
How's he going to get?
Logic.
How's he going to get?
How will the person who died?
How's the father get the tikkun?
Yeah.
Logically, he won't.
Logically also he won't get it, right? If he doesn't give it to the daughters.
So no, you just say he dies. He doesn't get tikkun.
Oh,
Logic says you don't get tikkun.
Logic says
No one asked you to be Machal Shabbos. You should have thought about that when you were Machal Shabbos.
Oh,
You didn't have any sons, think twice before you do a foolish thing like that. Logic is you're out. So now this is all I want to get a piece. What do you need a piece of land for? This whole idea of Gilgal and Shamot, this is stuff that's, whoa. Moshe wasn't apprised of that yet. So that's beyond logic. You go have debates about why do bad things happen to good people. Talk to a professor of logic, okay? And say, well, we believe in Gilgal and Shamot. He says, you're crazy. You believe in ghosts? You can't accept it. Okay, so, the son will do it and that will make a tikkun for. What are you talking about? Okay, and that's interesting. So who is this revealed to? It was a woman who introduced this idea of lo yidach v'meno nidach. That was the Isha Chachma from Tekoa that Yoav brought to David HaMelech. Then why was it a woman? Because a woman's strength is in hergesh. The hergesh of something beyond logic. And that's why it's not even the bina, really. Okay, so this is the idea. And that's the idea. He speaks out also what upset Moshe so much that Moshe, he introduced Shabbos to the Jewish people many, many years before they went out. He told Paro, he tricked him. He said, the Jews will work better if you give them off on Shabbos. If you give them one day off, they'll work more work in 6 days than in the 7th day. And the Medrash says that what do they do on Shabbos? They read Megillot. That talked about their history. And they were talking they were saying stories about Yaakov Avinu and what he did before he died. And he promised that we're going to have a Mashiach and all these things. And that would inspire them. All the things that Yaakov said where it's going to be Mashiach. And then all these words, Ubakach Diburim Elu. So on every Shabbos, they'd speak these words of encouragement. They gave life to their forlorn souls. That they'd have enough to keep them going for a week. They could go through a week of suffering, hearing the encouraging words every Shabbos. Yeah?
So then Moshe was not one of the Mashiachs?
I'm sorry?
Moshe was not one of a Mashiach, like a Mashiach?
Moshe was not a Mashiach.
He was a Mashiach, right?
He was not a Mashiach. He was
not a Mashiach for them.
No. He was the leader, but not the Mashiach.
Oh.
But there would be a geula for them. So that every once a week for 60 years, they'll be able to read their Megillot and say, yes, it's going to happen. But then when Moshe came at the end of last week's Parsha and he has to take them out, and then Paro made the work harder. Not only did he make the work harder, he said, and forget about the Shabbos. No more Shabbos.
Rabbi, we used to do it in our shul. Every Shabbat, you were filling us with the koach for the rest of the week with all.
What do you mean used to?
When we used to come I'm talking the woman and the man together.
Okay.
For Shabbat and we made Shabbatonim. I remember that gave me koach for the whole week. Exactly the same.
Well, still now, the Rebbitzin.
No, but I'm talking now the woman. I am a woman, right?
Okay, I'm sorry. Nothing I could do. It's
so we've been cut off in this corona, and
that's why you got the Rebbitzin. She's the Miriam.
Nachon.
She's the Miriam. If I'm the
Oh,
Moshe,
oh.
she's the Miriam.
But when you said
Anyway.
about Am Israel, they were sitting with Moshe Rabbeinu, I know exactly what you're talking.
But it wasn't even with Moshe because he had to run away. There were other people who were able to teach. There were still people who were ancestors, grandchildren of Yaakov.
There
who
was
there.
Rabbi Michalowicz there in Egypt.
Yes. Anyway, let's continue. So Parshas says, forget about your Shabbos. They now didn't have that opportunity to strengthen their emunah. And that bothered Moshe so much. That's why he got so upset at Hashem. He says, how can you do this? You're taking away even their ability to have chizuk in emunah. It's bad enough they have to work so hard, much harder. They lost the Shabbos. And he says, and that's what makes them so wicked. So what did Hashem say? Remember, as a Rashi, we skipped the first time around. When Hashem said, he spoke to Moshe, Va-eira el Avram el Yisrael Yaakov. I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So what does Rashi say on those words? Va-eira el ha'avot, to the patriarchs. And the whole world asks a question. Why did Hashem say avot? It says right afterwards, el Avram vel Yitzchak vel Yaakov. Va-eira, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And Rashi says el ha'avot. So what's Rashi telling us that we don't know? We know they're the avot. So I appeared to them with the name of Kel Shakai. I never appeared to them with the name of Hashem. I never kept my promise in their lifetime, but they still believed in me. So what was Rashi saying with this idea of saying avot? So that's what he's explaining now, where he's saying, where am I now? Got to find the place again. Give me a second. So they lost the Shabbos. So now Hashem says, Va-eira. Now, so that was, remember we said, what was the answer? Moshe, Hashem, why'd you make things worse? Now he's adding to this. You made it worse. Not only the work was harder. They don't even have Shabbos. They don't have anything to keep their emunah. What's going to be? So Hashem said, all right, Va-eira el avos. I appeared to the patriarchs. What does that mean? They're not just individual tzaddikim, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Kiyavas Beis Yisrael, the Avos are the house of Israel. Their whole actions were to blaze the trail for the children. And each Jew has inside of him a portion of the Holy Fathers. So Hashem says, don't be worried that they're going to lose their emunah. Because what the patriarchs did, they put it into our DNA. And you don't have to worry about it. Inside, they have a lot of emunah. You just have to, like a coal, you got to blow on it. So that was the Avos. He said, and that's what Rashi saying, Avos. They're still the children of the Avos. They still can believe. And then he added, what did Hashem next say? Then the 4 expressions of redemption. Yes? 4. Aha. And what do we drink? What do we do for the 4 expressions of redemption?
Wine.
4 cups of wine. And the 4 cups of wine represent the mothers. So that's what Hashem is also saying. Shekocha imos hakluim imos. You have the power of the mothers together with the fathers. Higam came Rasha. That's also an inheritance for the Jewish people. So therefore, they'll have that feeling of hergesh that the mothers have. But what were they losing? On Shabbos, they were getting the das. On Shabbos, they're getting the information. They're getting the facts, the history. But they were losing that. So he says, don't worry. There's still children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They still got some das. And they're children of the mothers that they got feelings. Even if you don't have das, you're going to believe in the Mashiach. All right, but what happened when Moshe came to them? They didn't accept the words, right? So chas v'shalom, it would be lost. We said, what about the words of Hashem? They're supposed to be words of Tanchumim. They didn't accept the words of Tanchumim. What happens? So now, Rav Wolfson says, okay, now let's go back and see the flow of the psukim. So they go and say, they couldn't listen, right? They didn't listen to me. And now also, remember we asked, what's this interruption of the family lineage now? Remember we said, what are you interrupting the storyline? Now, right when Moshe says, I give up, they're not going to listen. Hashem says, go again. And then all of a sudden, these are the heads of their respective clans, the sons of Reuven, the sons of Shimon, the sons of Levi, blah, blah, blah. And then we talk about how Avram married Yocheved. Remember? We talk about one female they got married.
Yes.
And Aaron took Elisheva bas Aminadav. And Elazar ben Aaron took the daughters of Putiel. What's going on over here? And it keeps saying, Eile Rashi Beis Avosam. These are the heads of their clans. And it ends at the end after a number of tzukim again. What's going on? What's the Torah interrupting here? The answer is not an interruption. It's the next critical part of the story, which is V'hinei Bnei Yisrael lo kiblu talchumim. They couldn't take it. Okay, they couldn't take it. So it comes out it was lost. So it says, Al Kain Nemer Miyad, right afterwards. It says, Eila Rasha Beis Avosam. These are the heads of the households. Lo Malach to say, you're making a mistake. Sharashe Ha'am, Shir Gisham Dak Yoser. The heads of the people, their sensitivities are more subtle. The leaders, Farhigishu Gam Oz as Basur Satan Chumim. They did feel the words of comfort. The masses didn't. But the heads of the tribes, they could feel that comfort. But the masses didn't. They didn't feel Adayin Benigla Adlach till later on. Isn't that what we said Tu B'Shvat is all about? Mm-hmm. Remember the Chidush Arim says, Shebarosh Chodesh Shvat, Makdimin Gedolei Yom Lahargish Hashpa, His Chadeshes B'Torah. We said on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the Gedolim, they can feel what's coming from the heritage. But the people, the masses in general, ain't margishim. They can't feel until Tu B'Av. But Valdeha Yiskashis Migdolei Ador, when the Gedolim connect, the regular people connect to the Gedolim, Zochim Gama Klalkul, everybody else merits. Hagam Shein Margishim, Hashem Margishim. They don't feel what they're feeling. So now you understand why do we mention certain women. Right? We mentioned Shvos Anashim, Ella Eitzel, Amram, Va-eira, Velazar. Why those three? So Esther, you had it yesterday, but you didn't know how much you had it.
Yeah.
Hema.
Saying the imahot.
All three of them together are Hishtal Shalus Leidaso Shel Pinchas Ze Eliyahu. All three of them together are part of the chain of events that brought Eliyahu. Asher hu pakid al kol b'suras samos. He's the one who brings all the good news.
Oh.
Hu bechinas hahergesh. That's the aspect of feeling. Shav shadayin lo bas eshui. Even though the time of the redemption has not come yet. We're not there yet. But mikom al kol mevaser v'yomer. The voice of this heralding and saying, bar goshas alev, with a feeling of the heart, ki davo ha'esa mikaveh. The time we're yearning for is going to come. Again, it's all part of the females. That they're the ones who are connecting to the aspect of feeling. And therefore, we talk about the mothers, Ha'imo shel Pinchas Zeliyahu. And who are they? Shem Yocheved, it's Yocheved. The Eishes Bina, and the wife of her son, Aharon. She Elisheva, the Eishes Ben on the wife of the grandson, Elazar, Shalaka from the daughters of Putiel, Vatello es Pinchas Eliyahu. This was the three generations of grandmothers who brought Eliyahu into the world. That's why I mentioned the females. Uparsha zu, he parsha shall shmias besuras tovos v'kabolos tanchumin. This parsha is the parsha of being able to hear with feelings the good messages and to receive the comfort. This is the exact place. See the flow of the Gemara of the Psukim now. Moshe says, why did you do all this? They're finished. They got no hope. Hashem says, don't forget, they're descendants of the Avos. They're descendants of the Imos. There's matzah, there's wine, there's das, there's hergesh, there's all kinds of ways the Jews can get through this. And if you're saying they're not going to listen to me, let's go and review. And when you tell them, you're right, most didn't listen, but some did. And those some who do, they can influence the others. There are those who blossom earlier. There's those who feel the energies earlier, and those who feel the energies later. Earlier and later. Okay.
1 second. So Eliyahu was born in Israel.
Well, no. Well, he was Pinchas. Pinchas who? Eliyahu.
No, אבל Eliyahu Hanavi. Where was he born?
Pinchas was Zocher. Pinchas was Zocher to go into Eretz Yisrael. Obviously,
Yeah, Pinchas.
and I don't have time, but the Zohar Kodesh talks about all these Roshei Avos. This whole thing is a hint of Pinchas, which is Mashiach. I don't have time to get into that. He gets into all kinds of other things that I just don't have time for. However, you see what's happening, but look beautifully here. Now let's go to the Seder. Put a little check mark here. Ubalel Pesach. So now what happens on Pesach? When we pour the 4 cups of wine, and we're pouring the 4th cup, where we're finishing up for the imos of all the hergeshim. What else do we pour when we pour the 4th cup? Masminim es Eliyahu Hanavi. We invite Eliyahu Hanavi. Look how we're doing 4 cups to show our belief, and we do an extra one. L'chavod Eliyahu, who's going to give us that announcement of good news. So we drink the 4 cups, keneged the 4 mothers. And the truth of the matter is, Sam Sefer says, if you really notice, there's not Arba Lashona Shel Geula. There's Shisha Lashona Shel Geula. Oh, you never thought about this. Look, the 4 main ones are V'hotzesi, V'tzalti, V'galti, V'lakachti. And then we say, okay, V'vesi is the 5th one. So Eliyahu Hanavi is like the 5th. Wait a minute. V'nosati osa lachem morasha. So I'll bring you to Eretz Yisrael, but v'nosati osa, I will give it to you. So how many expressions of redemption are there? 6.
6.
6.
Yes. Nachon.
Yeah, V'vesi is 5. V'nosati is 6.
Nachon.
So wait a minute. Doesn't work. We only have 4 imamos, huh?
Oh, we also have the.
So what do we got? Says the Chassam Sofer.
Yochevet.
He says, first of all, he says they haven't been fulfilled yet. And maybe when Mashiach comes, we're going to drink 6 cups of wine. But he says, Shebe'emes yesh sheish imahos. There are 6 mothers. The Lo Chashvin and Bilav is Zilpa shein shvachos. What about Bil and Zilpa? So we still feel their shvachos. But eventually when Mashiach comes, we're going to see how much they gave for that as well. So that really is 6. It's going to be incredible what's going to happen. There's so many modes, but that's concealed. And therefore he concludes, Shvat is the month of the calling of the redemption. As the Bnei Yisachar says, that Shvat is like the voice of the Baskol that announces the conception of the birth of the Geula. And there's all kinds of other beautiful gematrias that I don't have time to get into now. And he answers a few more other questions that I don't have time to get into now. But let's just finish the last section here. Al Kapanim. But Parshas Isman Shachalukas Hashpa Torah. Now, really, what's happening is Hashem's divvying out how much Torah is he going to give out in Shvat. That's this week's Parsha as well. Shvat Miloshin Shoifet. From a Shoifet, because the test, the Fei and the Veis are very much related. Ki ha-Beis va-Pem nischalfen. Is judged also how much is this chelik of Torah going to be. This whole month is a time of tikkun. Because the whole month is all shovavim, the return. As we explained, Iker hatikun bismanenu. What's the main tikkun of Shovavim? Working hard in Torah and davening. It's certainly socially, you have to be careful not to waste time. We say during the Sphira, the regular Sphira.
Sfirat HaOmer.
Yes, the Kabbalists have a special tikkun, they say. And he says it's probably the same thing by Shovavim, but it hasn't been revealed yet. But every day is a unique day of what we can accomplish. Parshas these parshios that we're learning now, we got to learn them deep. The Kotzker Rabbi says, you got to learn these parshios. Like a yeshiva bacher learns a Tosavos in depth to understand the deeper pshat. You got to learn these stories. These parshios are not just stories of the 10 plagues, 10 makos. Hashem knocked out Paro. Oh, what a wonderful kid's story. You got to go to the depths of these parshas. You have to draw forth strength in Amun Hashem, as it says so many times in these makos. Laman Teda, to know, Ki ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz, I am Hashem amongst the earth. She tachlis hamakos. That's the real goal of the makos. Shedu hagoyim ve'akiru malchus yisparach. That the goyim should recognize the malchus of Hashem. If it's for the goyim to know it, certainly we have to get more chizuk from these parshios. Hashem should help us that we should have this chizuk from that and to be better in tefillah. So this is the idea. So what the point is, as we said yesterday, that the Jews did not want to go. And the problem was not that the Egyptians were holding them back, but the Jews did not want to go. And we're saying, how in the world are they going to get out? So he's saying, you know what? There's a feeling that every Jew has. A Jew has that feeling. And we have to try and speak to them. Not everybody's going to hear the message. Like on the 1st of Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, don't be disheartened if not everybody hears the message. Some people will hear the message, right? How many people listen to the Parsha class? Tens of thousands? No. But the special ones who have a sensitivity, they're listening to a Parsha class. For them, it's the Echad B'Shvat. The Das is starting to germinate. And then you influence others. And that's how the Jewish people got out. At the end of the day, there would be some who it would take time. That's what the Rashi said. Moshe, be patient with them. Moshe, you're the man of intellect. The man of intellect doesn't have a lot of patience for stupidity. Doesn't want to waste his time with feelings. Hashem says, don't waste your time with feelings. I know logically they're not going to get out of here, and you don't understand this, but there's things that go beyond logic. There's that deep-rooted emunah. Some of them will access it. Again, you're right, 80% won't, but 20% will. And at the end of the day, their emunah will come through. So don't give up on them. You have to treat them carefully, patiently. There will be makos. The makos will teach them lessons. And it's not going to be easy for them to hear the lessons. But they still are a product of the avos and the emos. One way or another, that not one person should be lost. There are ways to be saved. You just have to wait for that opportunity to come. So this is the chizuk of the month of Shvat, where some people will get it early, some people will get it late. But everybody has the capacity to get it. But we got to do our job. Mirz Hashem, this whole COVID episode. So Baruch Hashem, we were spared the bad decree. Even though they're locking things down more, they said synagogues can still have 10 at a minyan. So business as usual.
You can't drive there.
What?
You can't drive there.
Can't drive where?
I'm sure.
Why not?
I thought they said you can't drive other than.
No, that one they never did.
You can't go to other places.
Okay.
But synagogue, you're
But
allowed.
only after
No.
8.
That's stores. We're still open for business. Baruch Hashem,
Baruch
it's
Hashem.
a good sign that we should be able to see our personal geula. Amen.
Okay.
It's only because of you.
Good night, Rabbi. Good night.
Thank you,